Okay. From yesterday's discussion, have you read about sickle cell anemia? Okay. So please tell me. Hmm. Blood becomes misshapen. RBCs. Okay. Agree with the definition? Where across the world is it much prevalent? Africa. Why? Why is there a prevalence of malaria? What is the geographical reason? One of the most basic things which we study when we talk about tropical climates of the world. Everyday rainfall, 4 o'clock rain, therefore an excellent breeding ground for mosquitoes, therefore malaria, as well as sickle cell anemia, because plasmodium is the acting as the carrier here, right? Okay, that is why Africa. Logic is clear. Now, after that, what have you read about it more? In India, which states like Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Odisha, MP, West Bengal, in some parts. Okay. Any initiative taken by the government to combat this disease? Yes, 47. Now it's understandable how should we cover the static portions also. Sickle cell anemia, so to speak, was a topic of biological anthropology. But how did we approach it? What is the disease? What happens in the disease? Where is it found? And way forward. For example, the government of India launching this initiative, right? If you want, you can also link it with the sustainable development goals. If you remember the number goal, the number of the goal which is focused on universal well-being of health, universal accessibility of health. This is how we'll go about with the answers. I think I gave you another thing to study, apart from sickle cell anemia. Nothing else? Keywords. Yes, any doubt in the keyword section? Have you had a chance to have a look at them? Clan, moiety, ferretry, I'll tell you in detail when we'll talk about kinship chapter. Okay? Because see, today when we talk about the Hindu basis of social order, we are very much clear on what is the caste system, what is the basis of caste system, Varna system and everything. But with respect to tribal groups, the compartmentalization is not that clear, right? So clan is a rudimentary category. If you have seen any representative diagrams of tribes, you must have seen they'll have a flag, and on the flag there's the image of an animal. Kabhi tiger hoga, kabhi leopard hoga. So they identify themselves with the name of the animal also. They even call them as the name of the animal and then the clan, like the tiger clan, the wolf clan. So clan is a very rudimentary kind of a division there. We'll come in detail when we talk about kinship, right? Yes, animal is related to totem only, but since we haven't studied religion, I'll take this up in detail when we talk about it. Yes, do we know totems? TOTEM? We'll talk about this later because unnecessary confusion create hoga, then we have to go to religion. Totems are nothing but symbolic representative figurines. Okay, it is related to a animistic form of religion only. Yesterday we were discussing what is animism, belief in soul. Totems are nothing but symbols of worship. For example, if in my community, I worship a particular animal which is considered to be very sacred. So I'll just put up the image of that animal and I'll have a flag in the name of it. So that is a totem. Totem can be anything, any living thing. It can also be an ancestor. Okay, we'll talk about all these things when we come to the chapter religion and kinship in socio-cultural anthropology. Apart from that, any term related issue, any conceptual issue? Possibilism, we'll discuss. Possibilism, we'll discuss. Anything else? Okay. Double descent, again, in kinship, I'll explain this to you in much detail. Okay. Have you understood the vocabulary to a certain degree? As we move through the classes, you will come across these terms again and again in the form of much more conceptual depth, so to speak. Right? The aim of the last class was to tell you that this is the vocabulary which we will use every day so that we can get accustomed to it. Right? Fine. Today we are taking up the very first chapter, 1.1. What does it say? Meaning, scope, and development of anthropology. One by one, we'll, if you want, you can look at the syllabus. That is the name of your topic. Okay. Ideally, when we prepare for mains exam, whether it is GS or it is optional, the idea is that we should have written material for every topic mentioned in the syllabus. That is the ideal approach. Since now we have time, we have just begun with the optional, you can make sure that you do this on a daily basis. There are three keywords which we are going to talk about today. Meaning, scope, development. Each one of these can be asked as a 10 marker or a 15 marker. So we have to be ready with our samples at the end of the class or at the end of the day, even if you are looking to incorporate from certain references. Right? This is how questions get formed. Okay, once we are doing our static parallelly, current affairs and case studies, we can take care. Right? Half of the work will be done. Okay. So we'll begin the discussion with development of anthropology first. Yesterday I was telling you that anthropology is a very nascent discipline, a very new discipline. It is not as old as history, sociology, psychology, etc. So therefore, there has been a particular route, a particular flow of thinkers, ideas, which stimulated the establishment of this discipline. And the establishment goes back to millions of years back. Okay, not millions, but a couple of centuries back. It is nascent in terms of establishment as a university subject. When I call a subject as a universally valid subject, how do I conceptualize it? That it has to be a valid discipline somewhere, no? For example, in universities, if I have a course in anthropology, that means yes, it is a well-researched, well-founded discipline. That kind of establishment came in the early 19th century for anthro. Before that, it was still in the development phases. Yesterday, we were discussing the definition of anthropology. Does anybody remember what we were talking about yesterday? Evolution of man. Any other definition? Yesterday also, I highlighted the most apt definition. So when we discuss these things, try to, catch those ideas that what is the most apt definition which I'll write in my answers. Can you recall it? Yes. A holistic study of mankind across time and space. Right? So whenever we begin our answers, we'll have a crude dimension that what the definition is going to be. Now talking about history. Do you know some Roman and Greek scholars? Can you name them? Very good. Plato, have we heard of Plato? Okay. Just as you study the foundation of any discipline, you go back to the roots of Romans and Greeks. If you remember, today it is the age of West, but earlier on the Romans were considered to be a very massive civilization. In fact, all the theorems which we study in mathematics, Pythagoras and all, Heron's formula, they all have their background in those mighty empires. Similarly, we have a certain role which the Greek philosophers have played in anthropology as well. So when we first begin our discussion, we highlight the contribution of some very prominent scholars like Aquinas. Plato and Aristotle are much more known because they substantiated their ideology in relation to the existence of a state. Okay, they were able to give more concrete form of ideologies. In fact, Aristotle had gone to an extent to say that anthropology is nothing but the gossip of man. That's the most, that's also considered to be the first definition of anthropology. It's just plain gossip because we are only talking about man. So the roots of the discipline go back to these Roman and Greek scholars. Coming to the second point, how did these people contribute to anthropological studies? By traveling or by using the travelogues of people who were traveling. We know very prominent travelers like Marco Polo, Ibn Battuta, Vasco da Gama. Yes, you will study them in ancient India also, that in the period of which reign, which emperor they visited the Indian courts. You will study there and the names of their books also. So in those books, they were targetedly recording whatever they encountered on the way. For example, while traveling on the roads, did they feel safe? Were there any robberies? Were there any stoppages for water? Were there any rest houses or guest houses or ashrams or temples? Anything which they witnessed on their ways, they used to record them. And what did we get to know about these travelogues? The society. They talked about culture, norms, practices. So they were kind of data collectors, but in an indirect fashion, because they were not using terms like fieldwork tradition or questionnaire or interview or sampling. They were just plainly recording whatever they saw on their journeys. So they formed one of the major highlights of how anthropology grew as a discipline. Apart from that, apart from this, the work of Christian missionaries was also very important. We'll come to that how European imperialism made sure that they had Christian missionaries in every part of the empire. And the motto of Christian missionaries was to only get people converted into Christianity at any cost. It became easier for the missionaries to convert people if they knew their language, if they spoke in the natives' language, if they understood their culture, to become more friendly and then to convince you that why Hinduism is bad. For example, you'll study this in modern India, that in the Hindu faith, there was a rule that if you cross the seas, if you cross the waters, you will be declared as an outcast. So Christianity will come and give you an alternative. That see, if you come to Christianity's fold, we have no such laws. You will not become an outcast and you will also get the rightful due of your inheritance and property which is in your name. It will come naturally to you. So people would feel more inclined to convert. There were different ways in which all this information gathering was happening, even before a very crude formation of theories in place. Theories came very much later. Obviously, there were certain primordial theories because the guesswork had already started. The values of equality, liberty, fraternity, they evolved after the American and French Revolution. Before that, the world order was resting on a type of thinking called positivistic thinking. And the positivistic approach had certain rudimentary ideologies which we might not resonate with today. For example, they believed that men have the ability to reason, ability to think rationally, and women were placed at par with other nature belongings like the plants, animals, and the trees, that yes, they are biological beings, but they are like nature. They are devoid of the ability of rationality. So therefore, they have to be treated like nature. And how do men treat nature? Yesterday, we were discussing anthropocentrism. We will treat nature in a way that it should benefit us. So therefore, there was a whole debate around this particular ideology. It is called positivistic thinking. Ironically, it was not positive in any sense. So there were certain primordial ideologies also which were existing. And there was a realization that evolution does not only mean biological evolution in the terms of physical standards, but societies can also evolve. There was a perspective that society is like an organism. Like an organism grows and evolves and develops, society also develops. So therefore, in different periods of time, you will find that these ideologies, these information were put into a proper place. And then using that information, certain schools of thought came. We also will see a great degree of Eurocentric bias in these ideologies because we are talking about the age of colonialism, which coincides with the age of Renaissance. What is the age of Renaissance? Renaissance? Yes. If I use the right term, I will call it the age of reason, where the flow of thought process changed from the idea whatever the church or the king says does not necessarily have to be true. We have to be more focused on the logic part, on the reason part, or the rationality part. And the biggest paradox is this period coincides with imperialism. So therefore, despite the whole narrative, the whole perspective that the European scholars were bringing to the table, that, okay, adopt rationality, humanism. Humanism means you have to be humanistic in your approach, respect every human being, equality, liberty, fraternity, brotherhood. But what were they doing in their colonies? The exact opposite. All of this is happening parallelly. So when all of this is happening, there are certain societies, certain cultures which are being studied as a part of imperialism. For example, initially, India as a colony was trading with the East India Company. We were treated very respectfully, like a trade partner. But when we became a part of the British Empire, suddenly we were the uncivilized, barbaric people who don't know how to live. So there was a sudden change of perspectives which started to happen. So therefore, you will see initially when anthropology developed as a discipline, it was criticized a lot because there was a great degree of Eurocentric bias. That you are thinking that the European style of living is the most paramount way, that the rest of the people are uncivilized. So you will see a lot of paradoxes. And we only have to keep this thought process in mind. Yesterday also I told you that the scholars are a product of their times. So whatever they were witnessing at that time period was codified in the form of one or the other theory. So therefore, around this time period, patriarchy was the norm. Therefore, women and nature were subjugated. Right? In fact, you will study in evolution that those societies where female heads were considered to be the norm were branded as uncivilized or lower civilized. They will create a ladder of civilization. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. Stage 3 is best civilization, the European civilization. Stage 1 will be the colonial civilizations or the matriarchal civilizations. So there will be a lot of bias in these discussions, which will be rectified eventually as we see more women scholars entering into the domain of anthropology, right? So we'll discuss one by one in phases that how anthropology grew as a discipline, who were the scholars who contributed it. In the initial half of the discussion, I'll tell you in the form of a story that how we began studying anthropology. And then we'll properly codify it in the form of an answer, that how we are going to write it when we get an answer. You will get a handout for the same after the class also. Okay, for that particular part, the answer type part. Right? So this is how we'll do. These terms, so if somebody do not know them, do not get disheartened. You will come across these terms in your world history NCRTs. Okay, in your basic NCRTs, these terms are very widely used. Okay, so that's why I say there is no compartmentalization between disciplines. And anthropology is the most humanistic and most scientific of all the subjects. So whatever you're going to study in other subjects is also going to have a certain degree of relevance and reference here as well. Right? So Renaissance is a French word. It means the age of reason. Because before the Renaissance period, whatever the church said was right. For example, Galileo, Copernicus, they were executed for proposing the planetary laws of motion. Because the earlier belief was that the earth is the center of the universe. And if anybody says otherwise, they'll be killed. Right? So king is law, law is king, church is divine. The origin of earth is divine. It is a divine creation. Therefore, no questions need to be asked. This was the idea. Okay, that there is no question above church. There is no question above God's creation. So there were no questions asked. That is why until this time, the study of human beings and the related societies was out of question for human beings. We were studying everything except us till the 16th century. We were studying everything around us, mathematics, psychology, history, but not ourselves. Because humans were considered to be by default. Like, okay, we are existing, we are a God's creation. That's enough. There's no more reason. And same with the earth, with the planet. Earth is the center of universe. So these were certain ideologies which were predominantly imposed by the church on the people, so that people do not develop these kind of rationalistic tendencies. But obviously, French Revolution and American Revolution proved to be a very big game changer, where the existing order was questioned by the people, and people realized that you can defy the church, that you can rise above the church, and the world can run on the idea of human reason. Okay, so that is why this is called as the age of reason, and it's considered to be a very foundational, sensational moment in world history. You will study this in modern India also, in world history also, in different places. Because after this time period, you will see a lot of growth of science, a lot of growth of all the studies in a logical way. Where if you propose a hypothesis and you give a supporting argument, your theory will be accepted. Till now, if your theory was an antithesis of church, you were jailed. So that is the transition. Renaissance is the wall which is separating both the worlds. Right? Okay. So initially, as I was telling you, human beings considered everything to be divine creation, and there was not much focus on studying human beings. We were considered to be divine creatures who are just existing. But at a later point in time, a certain degree of inquisitiveness developed, and there were certain scholars who started to study human and human related areas. That is why I will tell you there is this evolution of ideology where we'll treat society as an organism at a much later point in time. But for the 16th century, till the 16th century, we were not talking about us. We were only talking about things around us, right? After that, we have the age of reason. So we'll begin the story from here. On one side, you have the age of reason. And on the other side, you will have the contributors. So the story about Greeks and Romans I was already telling you. Socrates, have you heard? Plato. These are prominent worldly scholars who have a great degree of acclaim, not just here in political science, in every sphere. As I told you, Aristotle was the first person who defined anthropology as the gossip of man. Okay, this is the initial phase. Does anybody know about Herodotus? Herodotus was considered to be a very great traveler and the first ethnographer. Who is an ethnographer? Yesterday we were studying the difference between ethnology and ethnography. Can you please tell me that difference? Ethnology. Everything. If I increase the speed, do you have an issue? Hmm. Yes. And what is ethnology? Studying different cultures and comparing them. That is the broad difference. So if I'm using the term for Herodotus, that he was the first alleged ethnographer which we have. That means through his travels, he was documenting different cultures, tradition, growth of language, social norms on his way. This is what is ethnography, where you collect information in a detailed way about a particular ethnic group. Yes? So, why I am calling him the first ethnographer? Because these are the broad heads which he was studying. Different races while he was visiting different places. Customs, languages, economies. And this is how we today define socio-cultural anthropology. Ethnography is a subfield of socio-cultural anthropology where we talk about a particular culture in very much detail. So indirectly, even by not being an anthropologist, he ended up collecting all anthropologically relevant data. Clear? That is why we call him as the first anthropologist or ethnographer. Right? This one is clear? Okay. After this, you will see broad influence of Darwin. This is a broad timeline. Okay, we'll keep on doing additions. I'll keep on doing additions in between. Firstly, I'm giving you a kind of a full picture of how development of anthropology happened, right? If I talk about Socrates and Plato, their ideas were predominantly centered upon the importance of social laws and customs in a society. For example, if there are no social laws, a human will be nothing but an animal. Yes? Because we have CPC and CRPC where we can convict people for certain offenses, therefore people behave in a certain way. So Socrates and Plato are coming from that school of thought because later on you will see that their specialization is around the ideas of state and their working. Right? Now, Charles Darwin we all know. Very famous for the idea of organic evolution. The theory of organic evolution, which is also called as Darwinism. Okay. Second, he was influenced by Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell is actually a geographer who gave the principle of uniformitarianism. And what does the principle of uniformitarianism mean in geography? That all the geographic processes, volcanoes, the sea floor spreading, whatever is happening, they happen at a uniform rate, at a uniform speed, uniformly in different places. So that is why his principle is called uniformitarianism. And Darwin is known to have just picked this keyword and used it in his theory of evolution. However, Charles Darwin was not the first person to use the term survival of fittest. I'll tell you this in evolution class also. Herbert Spencer was a prominent sociologist and the first person to use the term survival of fittest, which was again picked up by Darwin to substantiate his theory. Okay? Herbert Spencer's idea of survival of fittest and Charles Lyell's idea of uniformitarianism formed the basis of his particular ideology, right? How did this particular person, Charles Darwin, write his theory? Do you know anything about him? He went on a voyage and the name of the ship was Beagle. And while he was on that voyage, he was actually not a zoologist or a naturalist. Okay, he just went on a voyage in a certain ship, and while he was on a voyage, he came across different places and different species, and he was documenting those species, that what kind of differences he was observing in every place. Therefore, his one of the most prominent work is On the Voyage of Beagle. First famous book, On the Voyage of Beagle, and second is Origin of Species, where he gives the idea of human evolution. Okay, all these books repeatedly we'll keep on talking about them, because see, we'll talk about evolution, Darwin separately also. So this information will keep coming back to you until you get, memorized with it. So that will come naturally. Don't get scared. Okay, it'll keep on hitting you again and again, right? So this is the broad picture. We began with Greeks and Romans, and then a ideology of evolution. Now go back to the idea which I was telling you earlier on. Evolution is not necessarily only biological, social also. So here I'll highlight the role of another sociologist, Auguste Comte. Remember, society is just like an organism. Like an organism grows, develops, matures, similarly the society will also grow. For example, during the hunter-gatherer period, during the Stone Age, there were no people whom a state formation could regulate. So therefore no states, only bands, only private rules. Community ownership of resources, no concept of public-private property. But as the societies evolved and people became settlers, they started agriculture, sitting in one place, having certain time. Therefore, these ideologies came into existence. If we were in the Stone Age, even today, we would only be busy hunting for food. So therefore, as societies evolved, different social institutions came into existence, and therefore, evolution of society happened. Today, we have different economic systems. We have paper currency. Okay, we also have gold reserves. We also have SDR, special drawing rights in IMF, which is called as, what is it called? SDRs, do you know? Of the IMF, right? Yes, hard currencies are there, against which any needy country can get a certain amount of assistance. So we have so many different form of economic avenues today. And sustaining parallelly are also tribal communities, right? So societies also evolve depending upon the need, depending upon the organisms living in the society. So Auguste Comte's idea was also a great degree of influence here. And post Darwin, so Darwin's idea comes to the forefront in the year 1859. And 1884 is when we have formal beginnings of anthropology as a discipline. Fourth point. formal beginnings. That means establishment of anthropology as a discipline in universities, and in 1884 it happened in Oxford. And the chair of anthropology was given to a scholar called Tyler. He's an evolutionist. We'll study about Tyler in much detail later on, E.B. Tyler. Now from this point, you will see the development of anthropology continues. In different universities, it will get set up. First Oxford, then Cambridge. Okay, and after that, a lot of research work begins. Subfields of anthropology get identified. That why are we studying this big subject under a single head? So they identify and break down the subject into 4 parts. Eventually, more specializations are identified, and socio-cultural is also subdivided into multiple more parts, like ethnology is a different domain under socio-cultural part. So as research work will begin, journals will begin. And when journals begin, they publish major selected, celebrated anthropological work, which acts as a barometer for any discipline, right? This is how it began as a discipline. Okay, the benchmark was Oxford University here. Broad picture is clear. Now, if I do certain additions here and there, you will be comfortable. Broad overlook is clear. Okay. Another approach to tackle this topic is you can write this in the form of a flowchart. That first you have Greeks, then you have Romans. Okay, so that in between you also have spaces to write other sociological scholars. Because till a significant degree of time, sociology and anthropology were together. So there is a great degree of influence of sociologists here. Okay. So now come back here. Here what is happening? Renaissance has happened. Therefore, can I say a major shift in thinking? What kind of shift has happened here? Question the authority of church. Second, human rationality can win. This is happening in the West during the establishment of Age of Reason. On the top of this, American Revolution and French Revolution. These are very good watershed moments which we have had in history. They established the ideas of liberty, equality, and all of them together highlight a humanistic school of thought. What is humanistic? Being human, where you treat other humans like humans, no? Liberty, equality, fraternity are some basic rights which every human should have by virtue of being a human. Therefore, we call this particular ideology as humanistic ideology. Now, after the setting up of this picture, as I told you, people were now clear that there is no need to be fearful of the church, right? Therefore, you will see Enlightenment philosophers. Why am I using the term Enlightenment philosophers? Because these philosophers who are going to come now are a product of the age of enlightenment, who will now come and theorize openly because you will not be jailed for your proposition. So different scholars will now come and propose their views. And the most initial schools of thought in that direction is the positivist approach, which we'll talk about in detail. Is this clear? Simple. This is some story which you already knew, right? After this, I'm continuing with the philosophers. Okay? You're following till here? No or no? Yes? So it's not a no. Here I'm writing the approach or the thinking. We call this particular thinking as positivist thinking. And the first scholar which I told you, already. Auguste Comte, sociologist who talks about evolution of societies. Is the idea this is a good idea? Till now, nobody has talked about a different phase of evolution. That evolution can be for the societies also, not just organisms, not just animals, right? So Auguste Comte is famous for that. And he also goes to give a scheme of evolution of societies, theological to metaphysical to rational. He says societies evolve in this order. What is theology? Can anybody tell me? Yes. So if I talk about theologism as an ideology, can I say it is rested in religion? Therefore, church is the authority. Got it? The first stage of society. What was happening before Renaissance? Church is king, or king is law, law is king, and even king is not above church, right? What is the second phase? Metaphysical. Metaphysical phenomena are those phenomena which are considered to be also beyond divine origin. Divine origin is when I dedicate a certain phenomena as a product of a godly interference. Metaphysical, for example, the concept of UFO is metaphysical. You do not have evidences. Some people claim they have evidences, and there's not a clear road ahead. So understand what is metaphysical, that there can be some conceptual realities which are beyond God or beyond the divinity. That is the second stage of evolution of society according to Comte. And the third and the final one is rational, because he is sitting in a rational society. Clear? He is sitting in the post-enlightenment era, and therefore he says this gradation will happen in every society. So can I say that societies are evolving and this is the direction of evolution? Fine? Point out wherever you feel a difficulty in understanding or you need me to repeat a certain topic. There's no issue, right? The idea is to make you understand the topic. We can repeat it, no issues. Okay? So just now we were talking about how from church's order we are coming towards other orders, no? For example, the concept of animism is not based in divinity. It is based in the idea of soul. For example, there will be certain people who might not believe in a kind of a incarnation of a god, but we might believe in a superpower, or we might just believe in Om. It's kind of a divine sound which might bring a certain degree of peace to your mind. These are metaphysical tendencies. Okay? It's a thin line between science and religion. Religion is something which is defined, which is perfectly defined. Though we study animism as a form of religion, but the concept of animism is something different. Okay? They do not talk about idealization of any kind of a divine creature. No stone worship, no murti puja, nothing. Just plain worship of nature, what is existing around them. Alright? Okay. Second, Herbert Spencer. Do we recall something about Herbert Spencer I told you a while ago? The idea of survival of fittest. So yes. So what does Herbert Spencer bring to the table? The idea of, and look at Europeans, they are so intelligent that they use the idea of survival of fittest to define that why they are the most fit creatures in terms of civilizations. Because I told you there's going to be a huge Eurocentric bias. So believe that Western civilizations are the most fit civilizations in the world. Therefore, they are the ones who are thriving or surviving very beautifully. So they were drawing inferences like these from these dictums also. And Herbert Spencer is the scholar who compares society to organism and therefore gives the idea of evolution, which was eventually used by Darwin. Clear? The social significance of usage of the dictum of survival of fittest is that the colonial powers used this idea to spread their colonies. Remember yesterday also I told you white man's burden, that you are uncivilized and we'll teach you how to live in a civilized way. Why? Because we are the most civilized. How? Because we are the fittest in terms of indicators. But there was no UN or any other organization to give you that idea that you are the fittest. Okay, they are telling it from their own mouth. Right? So this idea was used to justify colonial expansion. Following? Okay? How they are using these theories for their own benefit. Right? Have you heard of this scholar? Is it visible? Is this line visible? If I write below this, will it be visible for you? No, this works horizontally. I want to draw a comparison with this in the end. That is why I am not turning the page. Only two scholars I am writing here, Sigmund Freud and Karl Marx. Who is Sigmund Freud? Freud is quite popular. Who is Sigmund Freud? It's in the comment section also. If you have any doubts, online students, you can keep on writing them. Sigmund Freud, nobody has heard? Very prominent psychologist. Very prominent psychologist. Freudian technique, बहुत ही popular term है, layman term है, Freudian techniques. Because he devised certain different techniques to study the brain and how it operates. We'll come back and use his psychoanalytic technique when we'll study the concept in kinship. So again, I'll bring him back. So that time you have to remember who is Sigmund Freud. Okay, so Sigmund Freud gave the theory of biopsychological development. And Karl Marx we already know, theory of social development. Because for Karl Marx, the whole idea of benefit to a society depends upon equal treatment to different classes, right? The division of labor is what he was totally focused upon. We know Karl Marx, right? Right? All these scholars come under the positivist approach. See, the examiner will not ask us what is positivist approach. But if there is a question on development of anthropology as a discipline, I will use this keyword and I'll underline it in my answer. So that he knows, that we know, these are positivist scholars, even if we are not talking about them in detail. Right? So we'll use these keywords. These keywords will form the vocabulary of your answers. That is why I am underlining them. Right? And I have already filtered what is necessary. So if we learn this much, we are already in a good place for that particular answer. Right? Now, what is the product of positivist ideology here? That they were believing in the model that human beings or man specifically can dominate nature, can dominate women, and can bring on theories and policies. What is the reason? Because man was considered to be the logical individual. Clear? This is the wrapping up of positivist approach. Till here it is clear, right? Now, parallel to this idea, also study another thing which is happening in the world. Age of reason is going on. हाँ, बताओ. Andro is a term for man in biology. Okay. हाँ, it is same. Why? Because in biology, andro जो prefix है, it is related to males. Males, not just man, males. Okay, but anthropology is a different discipline, no? So in this language, we have anthropos, which is man, which actually should be human, not man. Okay? Anything else? We'll come back to that. Okay? अच्छा, अभी ये story complete करते हैं पहले. Positivist approach is clear. Now, parallel to the age of reason, what is happening? Colonialism is happening. And while colonies are being built by different imperialist powers, it was not just Britain, it was Spain also. Yes, conquest of Southeast Asia, Africa, India is going on parallelly, right? In that scramble, another power, another politico-economic ideology is on the rise, the idea of capitalism. And what does capitalism want? A lot of access to resources and people to sell their goods. So, in parallel to European rationalist philosophies, which we were talking about here, there is a political thinking which is also going on. What is the political thinking here? The age of capitalism. You will be able to interlink very easily. Yes? The entire modern Indian history is about decolonization of India and how de-agriculturization happened, how the peasants, the tribals lost their livelihoods because the Britishers entered every district, every area in scramble of more resources. All that story you know, right? So parallelly, we'll also highlight here the colonialistic tendencies. Now we'll come to evolutionary theories. Now I'm changing the page, okay? Come back to this. Have you understood that after the discussion regarding how post-Renaissance period scholars initially framed their arguments, the evolutionary theories were a natural to come first because we were talking about evolution of society and evolution of man. Already Herbert Spencer and Auguste Comte have highlighted this idea that how societies evolve. Can we now use these terms and we can get an understanding that how evolutionism came first, right? So evolutionary theories have come first. I am listing down the scholars for you. Fine? Who is he? Auguste Comte, Henry Maine, MacLennan, Bachofen. It's all right. When we have a separate class for evolution, I will again bombard you with these scholars. And our syllabus only asks us to study 3 prominent scholars, right? So these are an addition. If we can remember 3 of them, it is good. Yes? Yes? No. Tyler, Morgan, and Fraser, which is written in the anthropological theory chapter. Darwin is like English in anthropology. Darwin is a language. Okay, Darwin is not just a scholar anymore. These are the set of evolutionary scholars. Now, what were the features of these scholars? They justified how European nations were more civilized. No explanation needed for this point. Because on the grade of evolution, Europeans were already in the top hierarchy and the rest of the people were in the bottom hierarchy. Therefore, indirectly you are substantiating that Europeans are the most supreme ones. Therefore, they are legit giving the category of other type of civilizations. And who will be included in this other category? The primitive tribes, the indigenous societies, or native cultures. While this colonialism is happening, parallelly exploration of different colonies is also happening because they want resources. While that exploration is happening, they are encountering different cultures, different people. Indonesia is different, India is different, Myanmar is different, China is different. Whenever they encounter any culture which is different to their culture, they will brand it as a non-civilized culture. Because according to them, they are sitting in the civilized zone, right? To quote certain scholars, I'll tell you how biased these people were, and you will understand why government is removing Darwin from the syllabus. So Sigmund Freud has used a term that these populations who do not fit in the category of that civilizational stage where Europeans are sitting, they were called by him as mentally backward populations. Why I am telling you this? Because there's a lot of criticism of evolutionary schools, which we will talk about later on also. So I want you to just keep this in mind, that when we come to evolution as a school of thought, you have this thought process in your mind, right? Is the story clear? Apart from this, what are they doing? They are establishing a dichotomy. Nature, nurture, men, women. So this also we have already explained. That environment is now going to be used to further the ends of human beings, and women are considered to be secondary citizens who do not have the rationality, right? These are dichotomies. What is nurture? Environment supports you, it helps you to grow, right? The backdrop is clear. Romans, Greeks, sociologists, thinkers, Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer, then finally Darwin, then evolutionary scholars and their critique. In between, the age of reason and a lot of scholars who were supporting the idea that how societies have evolved. The idea that society is also a social organism, like an organism, right? Under that, you will discuss Sigmund Freud. You can give a passing reference to Karl Marx also. Clear? These are the evolutionist scholars. You will talk about them in much detail when we'll take up evolution. Evolution is the first school of thought which we will study later on, day after yesterday, day after tomorrow probably. Okay, we'll move to anthropological theories, right? Criticism of evolutionists is because they were supporting or justifying the European colonialism. Any doubt till here? Now, after this, what happens? Anthropology establishes as a discipline. Now, development of anthropology has begun in a sense that it's now going to be taught. Research is going to be done. Okay, different kind of ethnicities are going to be studied, right? So anthropology as a separate discipline has been established. This I already told you. Yes? Now what have I written over here? that with the systemic establishment of anthropology as a separate discipline, what were the goals after it was established as a discipline? That we have to research how societies have evolved and how humans have evolved. Simple. These two questions have to be answered in a detailed way. How? By research methods, different kind of research methods. You will see that these evolutionist scholars, later on we'll also discuss about them, they were armchair anthropologists, right? But the fieldwork tradition was not yet popular now. We were majorly relying on the Christian missionaries, travelogues, and other traveler philosophers like Herodotus, right? The idea on which this particular initial phase of anthropology developed was called psychic unity of mankind. Do we know something about this idea? Psychic unity of mankind. Not react, think. That all human beings, because we are human beings, we'll always think in a same manner, we'll always innovate in a same manner. The only difference is Europeans are in the most advanced stage of civilization, we are in the first stage. So eventually we have to reach that stage. We are in the evolutionary process. This is the idea called psychic unity of mankind. Okay? That every human is same. Every human being and their thought process is same. Therefore, every society will develop in a certain graded manner. Europeans are in the best of the civilizations and the rest of the world are trying to come to that best of the civilization. I hope the idea is clear. Okay? Firstly, goals. Second, the idea. And third, creating subfields of anthropology so that research analysis can become more specific and more analytical. Therefore, physical, socio-cultural, archaeological, and linguistics. And hence, now anthropology as a discipline now has well established and it will follow. Okay, now what we'll study after this, that's all there in our syllabus. After this, what happened? Different schools of thought came. Paper 1, Chapter 6, Schools of Thought. That is what we'll study. Okay? The story is clear. Now, what we'll do is, we'll rearrange all these facts according to a particular phase-wise distribution. Right now, what I have done is, I've told you the entire story of evolution of anthro as a discipline. If there is an answer, now see, different scholars have different takes on this idea. There is one prominent scholar called 𝐻𝐾 Ma'am. I will write the name, don't worry. He talks about evolution of anthropology as a discipline into 4 phases. Formulatory phase, convergent phase, constructive phase, and critical phase. Nothing new. All that we have discussed here, we have to arrange it in phases. And you can understand by the term also, formulatory phase. That means where the formation, the foundation of the discipline is being laid, and therefore it will be the most longest, naturally. Clear? Now we'll do that. So according to, so if there is an answer with regard to development of anthropology, this is a must. We'll write according to 𝐻𝐾 Ma'am, development of anthropology is studied in 4 phases. Okay, and he gives this idea in his book 100 Years of Anthropology in the year 1935. This is the name of the book. If we can recall, it is fine. Otherwise also it is fine. Right? First phase. So as I was telling you, this phase is before 1835. Before the year 1835. You can easily tell me which scholars are we going to study in this phase. Foundation of anthropology is being laid, therefore the earlier ones, the Greeks, the Romans. Clear? So foundation is being laid by different contributions. I've talked about Herodotus. You can write about Herodotus easily, right? See, these are the people who have contributed to this phase. Greek and Roman philosophers, travelers, monologue, Marco Polo and Ibn Battuta, naturalists. Who are naturalists? People who study nature. Like Darwin was a naturalist. So wherever he used to go on that ship, he used to document what kind of species is existing, what is the form of food here, what is the form of a bone here, right? What is the form of a beak? They are naturalists, right? So Herodotus, the first ethnographer in the world, clear? The first ethnographer in the world who was responsible to study majorly Middle Eastern societies like Libya, Ukraine, Syria, right? Around that area, because his area of interest was to decipher the war between Prussia and Greeks. So his area of interest was around that particular area. Okay. Now, after Herodotus, Protagoras. After Protagoras, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. Herodotus is already clear to us. Protagoras has used this dictum, man is the measure of all things. So if we study man and their society, we can study everything possibly, right? And he was the first person to give the theory of relativism. Yesterday we have discussed the difference between ethnocentrism and cultural relativism. So I understand you know what is relativism, right? So the first person to give that idea. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle are more famous or more renowned for their contribution to political science and the ideas of state, so to speak, right? But the initial contributions, because socio-cultural anthropology also focuses on how states are being governed, how we have progressed from being a stateless society to modern democracies, right? So that aspect gets covered here also. So Socrates says that every society is guided by certain universal values. True? So can I say that a Hinduist society has a certain set of values? Different societies have different set of values. Plato says society makes humans who they are. So humans are a product of society. And Aristotle highlights that social order in any society is important, without which humans will become animals. How did Aristotle define anthro? Thank you. Can you highlight? See, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, everybody is talking about society and the role of certain values, order, state. I hope you can understand. That is why their seminal contributions lie with political science. Who else? This is the first list. First list covered. Second list, travelers. I'm writing them here. 3 travelers, easy only. Marco Polo, Ibn Battuta, Vasco da Gama. 3 travelers. Do you know Immanuel Kant? You will study him in ethics. Okay. Carolus Linnaeus. Yesterday, did we talk about him? Yes? Be loud. Yes, thank you. Taxonomy. Here you will see contribution of scientific discoveries. Now see, Immanuel Kant highlighted the animal origin of man. So today if we talk about theories of human evolution, we talk about how we have evolved from the erstwhile, primate species. So Kant also highlighted towards the biological evolution of man. These are two seminal scientific contributions, so to speak. Carolus Linnaeus classified different species, organized them scientifically, right? So the father of taxonomy. And Anton von Leeuwenhoek, can you recall what is he credited with? The discovery of microscope, observing cells under a microscope. When a certain degree of research has to be done for a discipline, we will need certain scientific assistance, certain tools to analyze, right? Only then we can talk about cells and cell division. So the discovery of microscope and taxonomy was a great push forward. Two of them. Immanuel Kant is a scholar. And then another one we have missed on, Christian missionaries. We are creating a flow for the answer. Depending upon how much marks is allocated to the question, we can use this information. How did Christian missionaries contribute? Studying native cultures so that they can be coaxed to convert into Christianity. So indirectly, they were also contributing to anthropology, right? You know, there were certain British officers also who ended up studying tribes in India. Warrior Elwin, I think we've talked about Warrior Elwin. If you don't know him, later on you will know one of the prominent. He came to India as a Christian missionary and he was so influenced by Indian culture, he converted into an Indian anthropologist and stayed here till his death. Warrior Elwin was responsible for tribal Panchsheel policy, post-independence policy, where he helped Jawaharlal Nehru to formulate how we should deal with the tribals now. Okay, so there were certain British officers who were studying tribes and castes in India. Formulatory phase is clear? Huh. Marco Polo, Ibn Battuta. You will find them in your NCRTs also. Till now, we are using information from everywhere, from world history, from your NCRT, because we are talking about development of discipline, right? No. See, Carolus Linnaeus is famous most famous for because for the first time somebody gave a scientific classification of every possible species. So these are contribution of, so to speak, why I am calling this as a scientific category, because it was a scientific classification. It was based on science. For example, if a species has a spinal cord, it will be called as a chordata. So उसका एक rational scientific proven basis था. That is why we classify it in this category. Anton von Leeuwenhoek was the person who observed for the first time cork cells under the microscope, who spearheaded the idea of cell biology and studying cells. Okay? Christian missionaries you can write on your own. Okay. Second phase. What was the second phase? Convergent. 1835 to 1859. Why 59? You will understand easily. Charles Darwin's work were published in 59. Okay, that is why we stop there. All whatever you study till now will get converged in the form of Darwin. That is why this phase is called convergent phase. Okay. So already we have talked about Karl Marx. And initially I told you about Charles Lyell's idea of uniformitarianism. Remember? Geologist थे ये. Okay, simultaneously there are certain scientific discoveries also. Discovery of 𝐶𝐴𝐻. So this is a mount in France, and discovery of Neanderthals. It's happening in 1857. This is an archaeological site. When we will study archaeological anthropology, you will study different types of stone traditions. Acheulean tradition is one such tool tradition. Okay? Don't worry, all of this will come in your syllabus. James Pritchard studied races of humans, races. And all this information culminates or converges into Darwin's idea. That is why we stopped this phase in 59. Okay? Darwin's theory of organic evolution. One, two, three. 𝐶𝐴𝐻. This is a site, an archaeological site which is very famous for multiple discovery of hominoid fossils. In ancient India also, when you will study Paleo, Meso, Neolithic cultures, in every culture you will study certain tools, right? And every age has a tool tradition, a tool industry, and they are named according to the age, according to the place. So Acheulean tradition is one such tradition. You will study that in archaeology part. Okay? This phase is okay? Fine? Clear? Everything converges with the Darwin's idea on the origin of species and the theory of organic evolution. Finishes here. Next. Constructive. James Pritchard, studying races. Constructive phase 1859 to 1900. Why constructive? Iska ratta mat marna. Constructive means convergence. We converged on Darwin. What after Darwin? We'll have multiple perspectives, multiple theories, multiple views. Therefore, we will construct anthropology as a discipline now. Clear? That is why constructive. So in constructive phase, for the first time, we see anthropology in universities. So again, it is being repeated, Oxford, Cambridge. Okay, first thing. Prominent evolutionary scholars. So, till this discussion, you must have a broad idea now that evolution is the broad first school which established itself very early in anthropology. Evolution is the first school of thought. Are you following what I'm saying? Because when we were discussing Herbert Spencer, Auguste Comte, we were talking about how societies evolved, how humans evolved. So therefore, evolution has always been in the game ever since the discipline was trying to establish itself. So therefore, by default, it will be the first school of thought that we study. And today, if you go home and look at the syllabus, paper 1, chapter 6, first topic, evolution. Evolutionism as a school of thought. And they have written the name of the scholar which you have to study. Tyler, Morgan, Fraser. Okay, and Tyler is also the chair of anthropology at Oxford University in 1884. Fine. और क्या construct होगा? Just now we finished this idea. Because university setup has happened, research will happen. Therefore, focus on dividing the discipline into specialized subfields. So, division of anthropology into subfields like ethnology and socio-cultural anthropology, archaeological anthropology, physical anthropology, and linguistics. Done. A lot of journals and research will now begin on anthropology. That is why it is called as the constructive phase. Simple. What happens in constructive phase? Anthropology is building. How is it building? By setting up universities, by pushing research, by publishing research papers, where? In the journals. And therefore, dedicated study of specialized subfields in anthropology begins. Constructive phase. And what is the prominent school which was thriving till now? Evolution. But now you will see major schools will come in the next school of thought or the next phase. Shall I turn over? You will get a handwritten handout for this topic. Okay, I have given that. You will get it after the class. Last one is post 1900. Critical phase. Why critical? Remember the whole story I told you? Why evolution is not good, or why evolution has a lot of, so to say, criticism? Because it is Eurocentric, because it is using the ideology to justify colonialism. It is enforcing patriarchy. Okay? Therefore, critical phase. A lot of school emerged to address the shortcomings of evolution, like diffusionism, functionalism, culture and personality. All of this is from your syllabus only. If you look at chapter 6, all these schools have been written one by one. This is the critical phase. And you will see that in every school there will be certain drawback. Every school cannot address every facet. Therefore, it is natural for the next school to come. Right? And correspondingly, you can also write parallel scholars. For example, Whistler, Kreber. In functionalism, Malinowski, Radcliffe Brown. And in culture and personality, Margaret Mead, Ruth Benedict. These are directly from your syllabus. They have been mentioned. Okay. So in this phase, I'll conclude that this phase saw a significant development in anthropology as a discipline. Clear? Why significant development? So many schools of thought, so many perspectives, so many cultures will be studied. There will be a lot of research and therefore a lot of know-how about humans and societies around them. Development of anthropology is clear. Okay, now, since anthropology has developed, we'll write the definitions of anthropology. Okay, because what is the name of the topic? Meaning, scope, development. Development is done. Meaning, let's come to the meaning. Let's see how anthro was defined differently by different scholars. First one you already know. What is it according to Aristotle? ये तो आज याद हो ही जाएगा है ना? Okay. According to 𝐒𝐻𝐫𝐻𝐾𝐥, anthropology is the study of humans in totality across space and time. Next definition by Kreber. Anthro is the science of groups of men, their behavior, and their settlement patterns. Okay. The most easy and the most accepted definition which we generally use is the definition which was given by American Anthropology Association, AAA. Anthropology is the holistic study of man across space and time. These definitions are fine, no issues here. Okay, so it is at your disposal. जितनी याद कर सकते हो कर लो आप लोग. But at least one or two you should know, right? One तो सबको ही पता है. So for some edge, we can learn another one, either by 𝐻𝐻𝐫𝐻𝐾𝐥 or by Kreber. This is meaning of anthropology. Anthropology. Yes, in the handout, American Anthropology Association. Okay. Right, one more definition. Have you written down these 4 definitions? Write another one, fifth one, by Eric Wolf, ERIC Wolf, WOLF. Just look at this definition, okay? I'll just make you write. In the year 1964, brackets में लिख लो 1964. Write about it. Anthropology is less of a subject matter than a bond between subject matters. Full stop. It is in part history, comma, part literature, comma, part natural sciences, comma, part social sciences, full stop. It strives to study men and put a hyphen and write is the most scientific of humanities, the most scientific of humanities, and the most humanistic of sciences. What did you understand by this definition? That how it is related in part to every other science. And if I want to represent this definition as a diagram, if there is a question on meaning of anthropology, and if I am writing this definition, if I want to represent it as a diagram, so here anthro is sitting. So it is part history, part psychology, part social science, yes, and you can give a shaded portion which substantiates the overlap with anthropology. Okay? So history, psychology, social sciences, economy, polity, and you can just put it in a box. These are the diagrams people ask about. Okay? Some things you can do on your own. You can improvise on your own as well. So for heading for this portion, the portion where you have started writing definitions, you can write meaning of anthropology, heading meaning of anthropology, okay? So that you can have a track of the topics. Done? Psychology, philosophy. अरे और भी ऐड कर सकते हो. Medical sciences. Okay, you can add a lot. So it is to show, you can also make this as a subheading, that how anthropology is interdisciplinary. It is cutting across so many disciplines. These can be your keywords in your answers, right? This is an example. इससे अच्छा बना सकते हो आप. Like when you start writing your answers, you can make your diagrams. Continue in the next paragraph. Anthropology is the holistic study of the biological and socio-cultural evolution and variation in humans across space and time. Evolution and variations in humans across space and time. Next point. The coverage of anthropology extends to all human societies. Coverage of anthropology extends to all human societies of all ages. This is called universalism in anthropology. Universalism in anthropology. This is again a keyword. Wherever you find a keyword, just underline it. Okay? Next point. Anthropologists are equally interested in the reconstruction of human pasts, reconstruction of human pasts, as well as studying present cultures. Next point, applied anthropology is a subfield of anthropology where बार बार एंथ्रोपोलॉजी मत लिखो, ए लिख के इसको सर्कल कर लो, टाइम लगेगा नहीं तो. Okay, subfield of anthropology where anthropologists apply knowledge and research to solve anthropologists apply knowledge and research to solve practical problems. Okay, give a subheading, features of anthropology. What are features of anthropology according to you? Yes, it is interdisciplinary. These points you can make them as subheadings in your answers. Okay, first, it is interdisciplinary. Second, it is a holistic science. Third, it is a comparative science because it compares different cultures. And fourth, relies heavily on fieldwork tradition. Fourth point is fieldwork tradition. Clear? Meaning of anthropology, we'll write what anthropology means in terms of definitions, and then we'll highlight the features of anthropology. Later, when you will study multiple scholars, you can write a lot of examples in fieldwork tradition. For example, Malinowski is one who studied Papua New Guinea tribes called Trobriand Islanders. One of the most famous study hai ye. So as you keep on studying more scholars, you will write the examples on your own, because after evolutionism, everything is fieldwork, right? There will be a lot of examples to write. Clear? Meaning of anthropology is clear. Now, scope of anthropology is left, right? So, what do you understand by the term scope? Yes. So, can you tell me how will we go about this particular how will you form your introduction here? Anthropology is a holistic discipline studying humans across space and time, and then we'll directly talk about scope. It is highly relevant to study past cultures as well as the present societies. Okay, now we'll start answering the question, what is the scope of anthropology? Okay. Space and time. Will you give me some pointers? Otherwise, आप फिर याद करोगे. Scope of anthropology. Now you have understood how the discipline developed, what is the meaning of the discipline. You have also understood how it is going to study different things. Can we now articulate what is the scope? Because it is a general question. It's not a standard static sort. Yeah, please. Yes, very good. Yes, very good. Policy formulation. Can you also give me any example? Panchsheel. Very good. Tribal Panchsheel. See, we used this example in the class itself. So you can learn to take examples and put them relevant in the spaces or answers where it is needed. So Tribal Panchsheel by Warrior Elvin and Nehru. This is a very good example. Any other example? So see, sickle cell anemia by 2047. आप ही ने बताया है मुझे. I will use this. This is also a budget is a policy document. Anything else can you recall? अच्छा, now come to second pointer. और बताओ. Yes, solving ethnic conflicts. How? Yes, rather I would say that we will use the anthropological expertise to deeply understand the cultural divide. Fine? Anthropological expertise. What is anthropological expertise? Ethnographic works. There will be ethnographic works on different tribes. If I study them, I'll get to know the history of the area, the history of issues in the area, and we'll be able to cater. Yes? Very good. See, these two are from recent case studies. You can also highlight certain example where a ethnic issue has been solved. For example, the NSCN, but it was not based on anthropological knowledge. It was just a ceasefire. You can keep on lookout for examples in this scenario. Newspaper में कोई भी आया, आप use कर सकते हो, right? Like I told you, Warrior Elvin's ethnographic study of the tribal frontiers of India was used to formulate a policy. Because initially, after independence, India did not know what to do with tribes. Because during the British rule, tribes were considered to be kind of a barbaric people who don't know how to live. And most of the time, they were criminalized, right? So after independence, Nehru thought that the best way is to assimilate them in the mainstream population. But there came Warrior Elvin, that no, let us adopt a median approach. No entire isolation, no entire assimilation, a median approach. That is why in the last class we were discussing examples that like Sentinelese are still in the isolated scenario, but Munda, Orao are to a certain degree, they are assimilated in the Hindu fold. So that is an excellent example where anthropological advice was considered for policy framework, right? Yes. What else? Yesterday we discussed a lot of examples, if you can use them. How? Broad scope may obviously the standard part will remain physical, socio-cultural, archaeological, but this is going to be very rudimentary. We have to interlink it with certain concrete, case study, which will differentiate your answer from what the rest of them are writing. Otherwise, this will become an answer of subfield of anthropology. Subfield of anthropology is a different 10-mark question, जिसमें आप यही तो लिखोगे subfields, right? So yesterday, do you remember the application of, we were studying anthropometry. A lot of examples we studied under this head. You can use this, right? And see, if there are 3 heads which are related to current affairs or current examples, you can also add 2 heads which are related to static issues. For example, one of the most basic ones, studying tribal communities or preparing detailed monographs, or ethnography basically, that also you can write. Policy making is fine. Just as we have anthropometry, another subfield, urban anthropology. 5, applied anthropology. 6, action anthropology. अब ये क्वेश्चन 20 मार्क्स में नहीं आएगा, 15 मार्कर के लिए यू हैव एम्पल फॉर्डर. Okay, in policy formulation, you can add one more example. It's actually, have you heard of participatory rural appraisal or rapid rural appraisal? You will learn these terms when we talk about paper 2. What is participatory rural appraisal? Can you try to, guess the concept? Participatory rural appraisal, where you go to the rural people and you ask them to participate in the discussion about the policies which have been implemented in that area. It is a bottom-up strategy where people will tell you what is working and what is not, and what do they need. क्या पता उनको स्कूल चाहिए हो और बजट में वहाँ पे हॉस्पिटल बनना हो. So we should not follow the paradigm that the top-bottom approach will always work. Trickle-down effect did not work. You will study this in economy also. So participatory rural appraisal is an anthropological method where anthropologists sit between the indigenous communities and let them talk, let them participate. They will tell you about their ideologies, their problems, their issues, their ethnicity, everything. And using that method, the government can draft a policy. Okay, so participatory rural appraisal, you can add over here. What is applied anthropology? Applying anthropological knowledge to other sectors. But what is action anthropology? Using that applied dimensions of anthropology, taking action. Or I can say anthropology in practice, where I have seen results. Okay, where anthropology is in practice. That is what is action anthropology. And what is urban anthropology? If you look at certain spaces in Delhi, we say that there is a lot of traffic snarls, or today we had a rain, so in multiple places there's a lot of water accumulation. So that is because of flawed planning, right? So if there is a proper study of the demography distribution, how is the population distributed? What is the population density? Okay, so if we use those metrics and then design how a particular city should look, for example, Chandigarh is there. Okay, so that is urban anthropology. So not just designing, addressing the next step, that how to address issues which are existing in urban areas. अब बन गया है, गाजीपुर लैंडफिल है दिल्ली में, we have to deal with it, no? So if you deal and give solution for that, that is also a realm of urban anthropology, where you are using anthropological techniques and methods to give issues, to address the issues of people and solve their problems and give solutions. That is also urban anthropology. Right? Anthropometry आपको अच्छे से पता है. Same examples. There's no logic in repeating them. Yes, in the comment section we have some questions. Difference between parallel cousin marriages and cross cousin marriages. Okay. So see, parallel cousins come from your parent and your related relative in the lineage who is of the same sex as your parent. For example, your father and his brothers, they are of the same sex, males. Therefore, you and their children will be parallel cousins. On the other hand, if I take the example of your father and his sister, since your father and his sister are of different sex, the children of both of them, you and his sister's children, will be called cross cousins. Same on the mother's lineage side. I hope your doubt is clear, Aarti. Okay. Handouts will be uploaded, so that is not an issue. Okay. Scope of anthropology, will you be able to, write an answer? Okay. Now, take a new page and I'll give you 7 minutes. Write an answer on holism in anthropology. Holism. 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 Or why do you think anthropology is a holistic science? Try to frame an answer. Take 5 minutes. Firstly, we know what is holistic term means. It means that is a all-round coverage, 360-degree coverage. That is what holistic means, right? So you can start with definition and then you can give examples of how anthropology is holistic. How is anthropology holistic? उसका आपको argument देना है, बस ये करना है आपको, okay? Done? Please tell me what were the points which you have covered. Yes. Hmm. Hmm. After that, how will you substantiate that anthropology is holistic? Also the past. So we can say cultural reconstruction of past as well as the study of present societies. Fine. Any other point? Yes, we have to write that it is rich in fieldwork tradition, which means when an anthropologist is out there in the field studying a particular tribe, he or she will study every perspective of that tribe. There is not a narrow vision. So, therefore, rich fieldwork tradition enables a multi-dimensional study. Any other new point? Have you written, any of you? Yes, okay. But it is actually asking you how anthropology is studying that particular domain differently. Action or application is fine, but how are we doing it differently? That is what they are asking. Yes? Yes, very good. Same, interdisciplinary, wholesome, multi-dimensional. These are some keywords which we have to use. Yes. Do you want to add something to it? Yes. Yes. Good. You both? Any new point? Okay. I'll give you two case studies. One case study is of the Indus Valley civilization. So, when in Indus Valley civilization, we already know that still we have certain gaps to fill when it comes to IVC. We have not deciphered the language yet. Okay, we are trying to reconstruct anything about IVC from the fossil records which we have gotten. This is one example where fossils of the IVC people were mapped from different places, and it was found after the DNA analysis that the male fossils were not related to each other in any form, in any way. Whereas the female fossils were related in terms of drawing a backward analysis in terms of DNA connectedness, which came to the conclusion after anthropologists studies this particular facet in detail, because archaeological anthropology is a subfield. They concluded that this means that predominantly the IVC sites were matriarchal or matrilineal, because the matrilineage is connecting. This is one example where we are trying to draw lines and parallels on the basis of what evidences we have at our disposal. Therefore, holistic, how you are using a fossil to draw the culture and societal perspective. Another is a kind of a recent news snippet. Okay, so the name of the anthropologist is Sally Engel Mary. So this Pakistan case study, Sally. So when she's an anthropologist basically, and she got a call where it was being reported that in a remote village in Pakistan, a tribal advisory council has announced a rape of a woman as a form of punishment. Okay, so that was the news. Now, anthropological perspective of this particular snippet says that we'll try to assess the societal, cultural, as well as the political norms which are addressed in that society. For example, this particular news itself tells us that in that particular pocket, men consider women to be their property, or they consider that women can be empowered. Why? They can power the women more, right? And secondly, what kind of a tribal council is this? What kind of powers does it have? That takes me to the political organization part of that particular area. So therefore, we are doing this reverse engineering. Okay, from a particular snippet, we are able to point out or draw parallels between the state of the society and culture and its related political organizations. Are the examples clear? IVC, Indus Valley Civilization. So when skeletal remains were being earthed from the remains, so now you know Rakhigadi is the largest IVC site right now. Okay, so till now we are not able to draw parallels with respect to multiple fronts. But one thing was common from most excavations, that the female fossils were found to be related to each other after the DNA analysis was done. And the male fossils were unrelated. Okay, so when can the female fossils be possibly related in a particular area? Only when they must have certain lineage, they must have been connected to each other in certain form of inheritance, certain form of, pattern. Because see, if male samples are unrelated, that means probably they moved to other places and married or settled with their wives in their homes, which is a ideal setup for matriarchal societies, because women in that area were interrelated to each other. This is the logic. Okay. So even if we do not have a first-hand evidence, because we don't know their language yet, so we cannot decipher, okay? Therefore, this is the kind of understanding which we can develop on the basis of what is visible to us, right? And one of the important lines, I would say, with which you can start your answer, so this adage, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So this is a easier understanding of holism. See, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So if my fingers, if I break them up and put them one after the other, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they'll not have that much power as they are having right now. This is what holism means. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I've written there. Okay, top right corner. So online students, if you have any more questions, you can write it to me in the comment section. I'll address them right now. Another example I can give you with respect to COVID. What was the impact of COVID? The multifaceted impact of COVID. Work from home happened. Increase in anxiety and depression. Yes, increase in domestic violence. What else? Immunity gap. Immunity gap. Or people not getting vaccinated. Not able to build the immunity to fight the infections. Okay, okay. Migration. Loneliness. Lockdown. And racial attacks in America, in Australia, increase in racial attacks. This is a holistic perspective of the COVID pandemic, okay, where we are garnering every possible angle. If you add the degree of vaccination here, so the medical angle will also get covered. So you can see that how this particular disease had an impact on individual level, societal level, economic level. People lost jobs also, right? Except the IT people, they were getting work from home salaries, others lost their jobs. And racial attacks. So this is at the globalized level. This is an example of holism, that how should we look at holistic term. What do we mean by holism? That you have to take into account all the facets related to a particular issue. Okay? Meaning, scope, development of anthropology clear? Any doubts, anyone? No? Yes? Want to ask something? Yes, you can write this. You can write this. See, here I have used one definition of 𝐂𝐻𝐾𝐽. You can use any definition because this answer was asking me about why anthro is holistic. So I will not use the definition, it is holistic science, because that is a given. But I will use a definition which highlights why anthropology is holistic. Therefore, anthropology is the study of man in totality, which highlights itself that why it is holistic. I hope you can understand. So there we have to, choose meticulously. And as you write and as you read, you'll memorize all these things. Okay? Abhi lag raha hoga too much information, hai, but it'll all get registered. Not much time. Yes? Any other doubts? No? So we have wrapped up 1.1 today. One homework question for you. Objectives of anthropology. Objectives. As a 10 marker. When I ask you to write a 10 marker, we have to write a question in 150 words. Okay? 10 marker. Try to attempt this. Objectives of anthropology. I'll give you a brief perspective. When you write objectives, you should keep two perspectives in mind. One perspective is from the student's level, from our level that we are studying the discipline. Second perspective is from the stakeholders level. Who are these stakeholders in anthropology? It can be government, it can be a business, okay, it can be any living space. So address this issue from the stakeholders. That the objective of anthropology has to be answered keeping in mind the stakeholders whom it has to cater to. Got some idea? Okay. Try to build a framework around this question and we'll discuss it in tomorrow's class. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. I'll meet you again tomorrow.